Hello and welcome to the ICT Pulse podcast. I'm Michelle Marius, your host and the editor and publisher of ICT Pulse, the online platform where we discuss ICT issues from a Caribbean perspective. Today we are delighted to have Apollo Knights, Director of the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, NTRC of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. As the name implies, the NTRC is the telecommunications regulator of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. So in our conversation with Apollo, we'll be discussing the telecommunications and ICT landscape in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, how the role and function of the NTRC has evolved over the years, some of the initiatives the NTRC has implemented, and some of the challenges and concerns that the NTRC will most likely need to grapple with in the short to medium term. Apollo, welcome.
Good morning, Michelle. Thank you for having me on your program.
So, for those who might not be in the know, can you give us a quick overview of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines and the role and function of the NTRC?
Right. Saint Vincent and the Grenadines is a multi-island state. It consists of 32 islands and keys, with the mainland Saint Vincent being the largest of them. We are situated west of Barbados, about 100 miles of Barbados, south of St. Lucia, and north of Grenada. We share the Grenadines with Grenada, but we have most of them. Grenada has Carriacou and Petit Martinique. The others are us. So due to this multi-island state, it's a little challenging to provide telecommunications, especially if you want to keep all citizens with the same level of service. So especially those in the Grenadines, it's a challenge to get them up to the same quality as you have in the mainland. The NTRC has been around since 2001, along with other NTRCs in the four other Ectel states, that's being Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica, and St. Lucia, after we had opened the market. So we've been around for, you can say, 17 years now, more or less. And we have grown from a staff of just 3 to begin, and now we're around 14, 15 with some interns. And we have changed over the years, and I guess we'll go into a little more detail on that as we go along.
Definitely. So, as you have been with the NTRC since its inception, and outside of the numbers in terms of the staff growing, how has the organization changed over the years?
When we just started, we were limited in terms of competitors, and we had some conditions with the opening up of the market where we couldn't offer certain licenses and such. But after about 2003, we were able to offer all license on the Act. So we started first with internet competition, and then we had the mobile competitor, Digicel came in as well as AT&T. So we had two extra players along with cable and wireless. But after a few years, AT&T sold their assets in the Caribbean. Digicel actually bought them in St. Vincent, so we went back to two mobile operators. So we had competition in internet from Carib Cable. That was good until about 5 years ago, where then you saw Columbus buying over the operations of Carib Cable, and then you have Cable and Wireless buying over Columbus. So then you have more or less back to a monopoly in terms of broadband internet where we are now, and then the two mobile providers. But our main change we experienced is around 2008. That's when we were able to get the universal service regulations into place and then start collecting funds from the providers into that fund. And from then on, we started doing some different things. We started to fill some gaps where we saw other entities were not doing it in the country, as well as there were some entities that there were no one day to do it. So we started filling gaps we saw on the ICT part of it. But we see it mostly as, I say, our job as a mandate as an NTRS. We do stuff like normal regulatory stuff like spectrum management, managing the spectrum, some price regulation, customer complaints, those normal stuff. But we see ourselves as a mandate under the Act, and especially from the USF, is to connect persons. That's what we're supposed to do. Connect them and ensure they have good quality connections at affordable rates. That's the main goal of us. So in the early days, people look at connectivity as just giving them connection to the internet or telephone service. But when you look at the connections we got to the internet is mostly connecting to content that was developed in the developed countries, especially the USA. So you're mostly just consumers of content. And after we got the USM in place, we try to look at changing that. Start filling some gaps where there was connectivity gaps, but also trying to change that connectivity issue or where we connect to. So we started to move in towards getting persons into software development, creating their own apps and these things, software applications, and we're going to go into a bit of that a little further. So that's one of the big changes we did. We start not just suggesting connectivity in terms of access, broadband connection, but content and what you're connecting to and so forth.
Okay. All right. So I have two questions for you. From the regulatory perspective, what is the role and the relationship that NTRC, Saint Vincent, and the Grenadines has with ECTEL?
Right. Well, when we opened the market, it was 5 islands, I say very small. If we each was to have our own regulator, full regulatory body, I mean, the staff will be kind of larger and more costly to run. So we agreed to come together and then share the cost of regulating it. So ECTEL has certain functions that they handle on a regional aspect, so like more economic functions, spectrum management on a regional level, some legal as well, legal advice. So like we don't have a lawyer on staff. ECTEL have 2 lawyers. So they are more of an advisory body. They don't actually make regulatory decisions. The regulatory decisions are made at the NTRC level, but they provide advice on a lot of stuff. So like pricing stuff, legal matters, and regulatory stuff, a lot of legal stuff. And as a spectrum management and in terms of developing a regional spectrum plan. But actually like spectrum monitoring, we do that locally at the NTRC level. So that's a little of the difference in both sides. So we work together, but we work on many different functions within the regulatory framework.
Understood. And I guess just going back to what I'm seeing now as the broadening of the responsibilities of the NTRC. You mentioned it was driven by the universal service framework.
Yes.
So is it that under the framework you all have the mandate, or I guess the function of trying to move people from, or to try to encourage people to move more to creation of content and harnessing and leveraging ICT? I'm just trying to understand how one made that transition, because many regulators would not do that. I think they would probably stick very squarely within what might be their regulatory function, but to really try to move towards fostering the development of ICT in Saint Vincent, that seems like a bold move.
Yes, well, the regulatory framework that was created in 2008, I mean, the regulation itself speak towards the connections, internet, and so forth, kind of clear. Then we had like a more detailed level called the USF guidelines, and that's where we allowed for that content part, a little bit of it to be targeted. So we can't like do full projects of content or like app development, but we can put part of it within a bigger project. So the guidelines allow for that, and that's what we have done. So for example, we'll do a project, for example, our smart project. That's where we put connections in homes, subsidized connections in 340 homes at $10 per month. So the household will pay $10 EC. The balance is paid by the NTRC for the connection, right? But within that same project, we also do programs we sponsor at the community college. So we do associate degree in cybersecurity and associate degree in software development, right? So persons build, and those are online programs or try to be online. So you have people at home, so they use the interconnection we give them. They can then access that program at the college, where the online platform is also was paid for through the USF, and then do these programs in ICT development, software development. So that's how we framed it. But what we have done, I mean, the new USF regulations have been developed in the last 3 years. They're not in places yet. We're waiting for the new Electronic Communications Act to come in place, hopefully this year. And that gives us more leverage to do strictly content projects, app development projects, computer projects. Like right now, we can buy computers within a bigger project. We can't run a project just for computers only. But in the new framework allows for that. So that's where we say we're changing as we go along, try to meet the needs. But a very important, I mean, if you look years ago, if you wanted a fixed line service from Cable Wireless, for example, Cable Wireless will give you the fixed line phone as well as the connection.
Right.
So you had the access device plus the connectivity. Now everything else is going to broadband. But broadband in itself, you can't do anything with a broadband connection. You need either a computer, a smartphone, a tablet. You follow me?
Yes.
That's how we see it. So we have to give the whole. You have to give everything then, because these things are expensive. A computer, a tablet, a phone is a lot more expensive than a fixed line phone. right? So that's where we went more or less full circle. So more or less we went kind of off. We missed that part of it in the first set of regulations to get those access devices covered. But then we in the new regulations, we get them back the full line from the house straight to the other house, wherever it is in the world. So we get the access device, the connection, everything, and plus the content part that we want to develop as well.
Understood. So question, what do you believe has been the impact of these efforts?
Well, I can touch on a bit of it. I mean, I can go a little at what we've been doing in terms of the content part. We run first we run a competition yearly. We have an annual competition called the ICTP competition, which is targeted to secondary school students. Last year we opened it up to persons under the age of 35. So we change over the years, and this is over a 3 months period. We have two categories in it: an ideas part and an app part. So persons who don't have the technical skills to actually create the app and but have the idea, they can enter with the idea part. But who don't have the skills to do the app part? And when we first opened that competition, like 4 years ago, I think it was, we weren't expecting students to actually develop apps. I mean, we thought it'd take some years after we have the program at the college running. But we had students who came in the first year with apps already. So like people just learn on their own. They go on the internet, they learn stuff. So we have seen a lot of app development in that area. I mean, I love to see more of them come to the market. We have seen some come to the market. So for example, we have one person called Sinus Hines. He actually partnered with Flow. He came to the market with an app called Conservi after the first year. And he actually went to a number of regional competitions, Panama, Europe, and so forth, that he got into based on that work he did. And we saw a lot of persons who from that move on to do computer science degrees, got scholarships in Taiwan. So even though they haven't really, at this point, they're really creating apps, they are that with them. They go to computer science degrees. I guess later on they start doing more software development. So we're seeing that. We also have a summer program. We run for 5 weeks in the summer. And this is from the age of 13, between 13 and 18. And that's where we try to teach them coding. So prepare them for the ICTP competition that comes in the fall. So students who want to get into that, we run that program in the summer. And last year we changed it a bit. We start to introduce some controllers. We have one called Microbit. Microbit. It's a little credit card size, and you can use that for programming. You can use that as a remote control. You can code it with a lot of stuff and a lot of things. So we're teaching them the software part, and then the hardware part, which is a controller. So we think down the road we'll see benefits from it. Right. Also, we're doing some app development at the NTRC.
Yes,
we're trying to inspire the youth. Right. So we're trying to inspire them for those who don't think they can do it. So we actually have past students who interns who come to us, and we have been developing apps out of the same app competition. Like good ones we see, we can take that and work on it. Right. So far we have one called NTRC Connect, and that more or less was developed to help us out at the NTRC, work in the field. So we have all the cell sites in it.
Oh wow.
Right. To it, you have the coordinates for it, and we use it for the companies use it. They want information. We have potential investors coming in. They want to find out where the seller sites are. We can have access to it. And we just also see NTRC Grenada. They came on board with it, so they also use it. So we have their sites in it as well for Grenada, and their content is a little bit different, targeted towards their side. And we just move to make a split from it. So we have now VNC Wi-Fi, because in the original app we had also have the Wi-Fi sites under the USF project. We have Wi-Fi in all the schools, community centers, and we also had a section for open Wi-Fi, businesses that have the Wi-Fi open. So we had all that in the one app, but what we now decided is to split the app off into two. So the VNC Wi-Fi now is more just the Wi-Fi only. If you want to find a Wi-Fi spot that is open, you can go to that and find all the Wi-Fi spots. So that's a work in progress. We just launched that last month, I think. So we have it in the Apple Store and Android. And the important part of those apps is we're not using Google Maps as a base map. We're actually using Mapbox, which is similar, a little bit open source, but Mapbox uses OpenStreetMap as their base map, which is something like Wikipedia stuff. It's open source stuff, so anyone can go in there, create an account, and add stuff to it. Right. So if you want to develop an app, you can then have your app use OpenStreetMap as a base map. And that's pretty much more developed for Saint Vincent and Google Maps. Okay, if you go to Google Maps and show in the rest Eastern Caribbean, a lot of stuff is missing. A lot of roads are missing in it. And I guess we're small. Google though is not really a big part of the picture, so we don't spend much time, yes. And over the last few years, Google has restricted what you can change in the map. A lot of errors in it too that can't get changed. So that's where we went with the map box, where we had more access and we can work on it. So we just actually did all the roads. We have an intern with us for the last 4 months, and we completed all the road network in Saint Vincent.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. Right, and we plan to do more improvement in it. So, and the app has full navigation capabilities, voice gives you voice navigation. It works very good. And so that a lot of work we did in-house together to work, especially navigation part. We actually work with Mapbox, because when we started with Mapbox didn't have that function as yet. So we actually work with them as they develop it. So sometimes they come into it. Yeah, so more or less work along with them as they roll out the navigation feature. So it took us like 2 years to get it done, but it's pretty good. So that's good work, and this is stuff other persons can use. So other persons who want to create apps can use Mapbox or OpenStreetMap as their base stuff, and we think other persons in the region can do the same, can add other stuff to OpenStreetMap, makes it a lot more accurate. We also did one called Vinci Prices for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This was also an app that came out from our ICTP competition. It's let consumers find prices for commodities in the supermarkets, the main supermarkets in St. Vincent. Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Consumer Affairs, they normally print like a half-page ad, I think, every 2 weeks in the papers, comparing like 10 items. So normally use, they get the prices at different supermarkets. So we did an app for that. Based on one idea came out, the app competition, we worked with them and developed that. So that's in Google Play Store.
Oh, wow.
And we have more items in it than what you find in the papers. So that's pretty good. You can go dig for the lowest price item, which supermarket it is. Yeah. Those are some of the things we're working on. More or less, it's our content stuff. And we think software development is something that our region, our islands can compete with anyone around the world with. We see it as something that's not a big entry barrier. You don't need any big factories or big capital to start. Right? I mean, we see so many apps around the world. People make a lot of money from them. They affect a lot of people, but we haven't seen a lot from the Caribbean. So that's we're trying to play a little part in getting that done and get persons more involved in creating stuff as compared to just consuming stuff from overseas. But there's still room for more apps. If you look at it, the new apps coming every year, it's still growing. There's always room. It's just like lawyers. There's always room for new lawyers. Yeah, so you always have new things. The world is always changing. So you always see new needs. And you have some needs that can meet a global settings, and there's some needs more for a niche market. So there are always needs that you can meet. And everything now you can do is software. So software can do so much. And we have the new areas coming up, augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analysis. So all those new areas that we want to see our young people be involved with. And to that end, we're doing a new project now under the USF to launch soon. So we're going to offer like subsidies for persons who want to do online courses. So we're actually scrapping the software development program at the college, the 2-year one. So as you go along, some things work, something doesn't work as it is. So we're going to continue with the cybersecurity one, but the software one, I think it changes so much. And with the environment, it's hard to get the changes fast. So there are a lot of these programs already online, places like Coursera and so forth, others that offer these short-term, and they're very fair. And some of the top universities offer them.
Right.
And specializations that you can do 5-6 together. And they're very price effective. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer these subsidies. People can apply through the NTRC for them. We'll pay for them. And once you pass the first one, if you want to go on, we'll pay for the second one and so forth. So we'll be doing that for this year, later in this year.
Okay.
So we think that will help for developing our IT base and skills. I mean, these persons can work and do this stuff. They can work here, work anywhere in the world. As you know, the market is changing. People no longer just hire people degrees, as you know. People hire people just with Coursera qualifications these days and experience. So.
Definitely. So I'm just quite impressed by all of what you and the NTRC have been able to accomplish, and really the effort and the thought that is going into finding ways and means to help people to better leverage technology, and whether it is in terms of capacity building, but also in terms of even like all of these apps that are being developed, because oftentimes people have good ideas, but just the market to help them to connect with the market can be such a challenge. And certainly just being able to satisfy some needs that are real within the society. I think that is such an excellent initiative.
Yes, and I just want to add to, in the US, as you know, and some of the bigger countries, that we call venture funding and angel funding. And that's where the people put in the funds to these guys, young guys, the ideas, and bring them to market and coach them, mentor them. Right. So we have some of that program as well. We're running with the NCTI in Saint Vincent. This is a training school from the government, and on the CASEP project. So we actually work with them. So a lot of the stuff that they do is stuff that we work with them in developing on the World Bank project. So after that project actually had venture funding. So we obviously the same like Seniors Hines, he got funding from that to bring us up to market. So we had other parts then within the government service to help out with that. So and we had the CED, Center in Enterprise Development, so they would mentor them and give them the business coaching and so forth. So we have all the different pieces working together. But going forward, as you know, these World Bank projects don't last forever. So these are things that we need to have in place ongoing. So in the new USF regulations, we create them for venture funding as well. So we can have these things, incubatees and stuff, cater for them going forward to fund them with new apps on a continuous basis. Because we don't have any other framework in place for such a model then, with this venture funded.
Understood. And that's such an excellent idea, because I think sometimes we are waiting for somewhere for that sort of support to materialize from somewhere else. And I guess to the extent that that can be incorporated within the new framework is excellent. So I noticed something in doing my research, that the NTRC seems to be actively promoting prepaid Wi-Fi access cards. What is that, and why?
Right, that's what was one of our projects a few years back. I mean, at the time, again, data was expensive. If you want to use data on your phone, it was costly. And we put in a bunch of Wi-Fi. So we put Wi-Fi in the schools that were open and free and community centers, but a lot of tourism, we have a lot of tourism sites that were developed, like parks, and we decided to put some Wi-Fi spots there as well, but those were prepared to cater for the tourists who want to come and get and use Wi-Fi, or people want to go in the park for the day. So that's where the idea came about from. But we actually, since then, I mean, the data prices have come down as we go into 4G. And so we have to change as the time change. So we actually have opened some of them free since then. And we're thinking about opening up all of them and make them free maybe this year. So at the time, when we look at the data, some places we had good usage, some was very, very low. People still didn't want to buy the cards to use it. So, but that's the idea behind of it.
Okay.
I just want to add as well, we're speaking a lot of the software part and the app stuff, but we're still a regulatory body for telecom. And there's still needs in terms of people complaining with speeds in the country, quality of service. So I just want to touch a little on that part. I say we've been working in that area for the last few years as well in a different way. As you say, after you try competition, you hope that does it. If it doesn't that working, you have to do other things. So under the same CASEP project with the World Bank, we had a feasibility study done to find out where the gaps, what the needs are in the country. Right, and I said again, we saw the Grenadines as being one of the areas where the speed is huge, because that's served by microwave links, and the woman is congested for some time. So one of the results came over that was to put a subsea cable to the Grenadines. It's something the providers wanted to do years ago, but for each one of them, the business case was not there. It was so expensive. I mean, the population size in these islands, they're very small. The biggest spec will maybe have 5,000 persons, so the payback period will be too long. So we actually did a tender for that, for a subsea cable on the CASEP project, which the governments are funding, Grenadines and Saint Vincent government. We funded that more or less for 15 years. And that cable will go in this year, actually be laid in June. And then and along with that, we are also doing a fiber network in the 3 islands of CASEP, St. Lucia, Grenada, and Saint Vincent. So they're connecting all the government buildings by fiber, and they just have won that contract. So that's being rolled out as we speak and should be up by this year. So in these 3 islands, within another 6 months, I believe, we'll have fiber to the home. So we're moving towards a first world network, and we expect comparable pricing with the incumbent cable wireless who have a broadband currently. So I don't expect maybe its price will go down, but I guess we'll have a lot more speed and better consistent quality based on as a brand new network compared to cable wireless who are still using copper, ADSL, and a hybrid coax system for the cable TV.
Yes.
So we have been working on that for the last few years with the government on that project. The NTRC has been involved with that. We actually came out from we did a draft broadband plan for the country a few years ago, and a lot of the stuff that came out of that fed into that project. So we worked at that angle in terms of improving the connectivity countrywide, and I guess, and I said, for the same levels island-wide, countrywide, all the islands. So everybody will have fiber, everybody connected.
So I think so. Certainly by this time next year, certainly Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, and I'm sure Grenada and Saint Lucia as part of that CARSIP project might look a whole lot differently than what they do now.
Yes, big difference. Yeah, before the end of the year, based on the project schedule and based on the rollout already, they're already rolling out the fiber on the poles underground. So the work is progressing very good.
Okay.
I said the cable to the Grenadines should be laid in June this year.
Wonderful. So let me just change tact a little bit, because I guess in just prepping for our discussion, I noticed that NTRC Saint Vincent and the Grenadines is pretty active on social media. You yourself do like a monthly Facebook live session. And again, this is not the norm with regulators. They tend to be in the background doing what they need to do. But why has the NTRC decided to embrace social media in the way that it has?
Yes, again, you just have to see how the market is going. I mean, you have to. Our consumers are all age ranges. You have those that look at TV still, and those that get the news from the newspaper, and those that get the news from social media. The younger ones, millennials. So they're all our consumers at the NTRC. So we have to look at that and get to them. So we have to do all the channels to get to people. So we started a Facebook page maybe 6 years ago or more, I think. We have over 6,000 followers, likes on it, so which is pretty good. One of the largest in Saint Vincent, public or private entity.
Right.
We have we have a staff that manages it every day then. We monitor the comments from people. We also monitor the Facebook pages of the providers. So we'll monitor it and see what comments people are making and issues being raised from it, and we document it and react on it. So we have the Facebook, we have Instagram, Twitter. We still use Twitter, but not many persons in the island like into Twitter, so you have to adjust the suit. So mostly we're on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay. So, I mean, we have spoken about some of the wonderful things that are happening in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, both from the access and infrastructure regulatory component, as well as the projects and initiatives that, through the NTRC have been implemented to leverage ICT and help the country and the society better capitalize on what the technology can offer. But certainly from your vantage point, having been in the game for as long as you have, what are you seeing on the horizon that the NTRC will have to grapple with? What are some of the changes or challenges or concerns that you might have?
Well, the ones I see there, I've been seeing for a while, is cybersecurity stuff. That is there, and I don't think we're doing enough on it. I mean, on a country level, it's not really under our mandate as such, but we're raising it as the ICT-related stuff. I don't think enough is being done in that area. We have the issue of cross-border services, the OTT. But I think those, I guess you have to go to the market level with those. And then we see issues like privacy stuff coming up, and the social media stuff, and these things are coming up affecting our citizens. Again, we don't have much tools to deal with those stuff. But even to that, I mean, even the cybersecurity part, even though it's not our mandate, we have developed two presentations, videos and those stuff, and we actually go to the schools, and we actually have someone from the police along with us and adult education sometimes, and we do visit to the schools and try to educate people as well. Just do a little piece on it from that side. But we still think we need like sorts, locally, national sorts to deal with this stuff. Because we're seeing the impact of it already. A lot of consumers. I mean, we see ATM fraud, we see card fraud. Those things happen to myself, to other people I know. So those are the big issues I think come in, and then you also have to look at how the market is changing. I say everything is moving towards data. We're seeing the providers, the revenues are dropping, because they were mostly on voice revenues or even cable TV. We're seeing the cable TV subscribers are dropping because obviously in the OTT stuff, the Android boxes, people are using those to get the content. It's illegal, but they're using them. So that affects the revenue of the providers, and the revenue of the providers affect our revenue as a regulator. That's a percentage of it. So those are the changing stuff. Where I think the companies have to change. I mean, the market is always changing, as you know. I think going forward, they have to concentrate on being an access company as well as new services, like into security and these things, offering security services, camera services, facial recognition services. There are a lot of different things these companies can change into. As you know, over the years, a lot of companies have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Changes those that stay in business. I mean, you look at some of them, there was more or less companies that build stuff and then they change into more services oriented. So they actually have to change. So I think those that change will survive. Those that don't change will just get left behind, I think, after a while. So
Absolutely. Okay, so we're beginning to wind down, and I think I have just about two more questions for you. You know, as the director of NTRC Saint Vincent and the Grenadines since its inception, what do you think has been your greatest achievement?
as the director of the NTRC, biggest achievement.
Mm-hmm.
I think about that sometimes. I think the biggest one to date, maybe the CASIP stuff, with the work done with the fiber network and so. I've been involved with that from the beginning. Well, some of the ideas I've raised it before with the ministers back, or previous minister, and then started put it into the project. So a lot of stuff that went into it was stuff like raised over the years. I wanted to get done by the government, but never got it done. So, and that's a big project. That project is over $250 million. That was saying a contract saying. I mean, when the bid came in and we saw it, it wasn't. We more or less asked for just connectivity for the government buildings in certain areas. We didn't actually say we want a fiber network all over there.
Mm-hmm.
So the bid from Digicel, the only bidder, actually put forward more than we asked for them, more or less to say on that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
We had asked for subsea to Grenadines. I said that one we had asked for when you saw it. But on the mainland, we just asked for certain speeds then at certain places, the government buildings could put together. But Digicel put forward a project where they had a full fiber network. So, and I said when I saw the price, it was big. It was way out. I mean, the World Bank was spraying some funds at $10 million. That's small.
Mm-hmm.
We took us 2 years to negotiate that final contract. We just signed last year, July, almost 2 years after the bid came in.
Right.
Yeah. So I was involved in the consultants first and looking at the feasibility stuff and hiring them. I was involved in evaluating the bids. I was also involved in the regional negotiating team, negotiate the contract. So to actually see the results that are happening after that is very humbling to actually see we get a full fiber network in these 3 islands, as well as other stuff too. We're having data centers in Grenada. Mm-hmm. They entered in the schools as well. The new PBXs, a new E911 service for Saint Vincent. So there are a lot of other stuff with the two, very good stuff. So it will bring us more or less up to date, right? So that one of the biggest stuff, but there are also other good stuff along the way. That was good, I think. So the work with the ice quake stuff is good, and some other stuff we got. One important one is very small but very good as well. Is ever since we opened the market, we had expected a lot of small players to come in, especially local ones, which never happened. Mm-hmm. We got especially like resellers and so on, IP phone cards and these things, and they always got a difficult time with the big companies. I mean, and advice back then we got to excel with it to say, oh, this provider can't do this with the license doesn't allow this. But a few years ago, we gave a license to another small guy, and we actually went on our own. We ignored the advice of Ectel, and we went based on our local legal advice locally. Mm-hmm. That guy, after 2 years battling with Digicel and Cable Wireless, we actually had a tribunal hearing on them and made a ruling on it, and he actually got into connection with them, and he is offering service. So that's another good one as well for the small players to get in. I think it sets a precedent going forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that is something also.
Okay.
Is very, yeah.
And are there any specific goals that you would like to achieve, within the next, few years?
Well, the big issue that I didn't mention with the challenges is one that in terms of broadcast standards, that's one big issue. We don't have any broadcast commissions in these islands to handle like content stuff, like the radio stations and the other stuff. There's nothing there, but the issue exists and it's getting worse. You listen to the content and the radio stations that are being played, and that's like programming. We're programming our kids every day with that good stuff. So that's something that we I think need to be attacked in some way.
Mm-hmm.
You see it even on the big networks. I mean, it was out of hand, and then finally you see they started stepped in with even Facebook and the content people posting. But first, you see before, it's free speech, it's just content, you can't regulate it, leave it alone. But as you start seeing the results and the implication and the impact it having on certain people, then you finally see they're making a step in. So you actually see these big companies in the developed countries more or less regulating content. 10 years ago, you never imagined that. I mean, but 10 years ago, I was saying the same thing. We need to do it before it gets out of hand. So because it affects people. You have the cyberbullying stuff happens in it as well, cybercrime. So all those stuff, you see pretty that stuff. I'm sure you see that as well on Facebook and people bringing out other person saying untruth stuff about other people.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very bad. So that is a big area, I think, that we need to work on. It's very difficult, especially cross-border stuff. I mean, it's not in your country, it's happening in another island, another country. Yeah, so it's very hard.
So is that, I guess, one of the projects that Apollo Nights would be taking on, or what is next for Apollo Nights? I mean, I trust that you will be with the NTRC for a few more years, but what's next?
What's next there? Whoa. I guess some people have those 5-year goals. I don't really have them as such. I say things change so fast. Some ideas come to me. So ideas come to me, I just go with them. That's what I say. Let's get the feeling for it. So that it just comes and I go with it. So I try to read a lot, see what new stuff coming up. Go to these new exhibitions, conferences. Try to go more bigger ones globally, and see how I can maybe take some stuff from that and make it happen locally,
right?
To help the young. So that's more or less what I look at, to see how I can more or less get the younger generation involved in software development, coding, and the new technologies, the new data analysis, augmented reality, AI, and these stuff. So what we can do to help them in that, inspire them to go in those areas and help them along the way, and then let them do this stuff. So that's more or less what I'm planning to do in the next 5 years.
That's wonderful.
And get the framework to do it. So I say we have the new USF regs, other regs already waiting, quality of service regs as well. We've been deeply involved with those over the last 4 or 5 years. So hopefully get those in this year so it could help with the consumers. So, right. So I think if we get those in place as some other new ones and get the framework to help out persons to be able to put the ideas into execution mode. So funding for them, tutoring for them, access to the teachings and skills they need. Yeah, so that will play a role in that. Both on the NTRC side and working with the other institutions we work with. So I say we work with the NCTI, we work with the CED, we work with the community college. So not just us alone, we try to work with other partners locally and even regionally with, for example, the CTU, Ectel also, and other NTRCs we try to work with.
That is great. And on that note, Apollo, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see that, NTRC, Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, the breadth and depth of the work that it is doing and the impact that it is having on the country. Because, as I had said earlier on during our discussion, is the fact that other regulators probably would stick very closely to the regulatory mandate that they have and may not necessarily delve too far into trying to help the society to better leverage the technology. So, I really want to commend you and your team for all that you've been doing, and I'm looking forward to seeing the fruits of those labors continue, I guess, certainly in terms of, the improvements in the infrastructure and speeds and so on, but also in terms of the products and services that may ultimately come to a regional or even an international market. So thank you again.
Yes, Michelle, and just in closing, I just want to touch, I see all the stuff we mentioned so far was dealing with citizens on our terrestrial space. I started out to mention we're 32 islands and keys, and that means even though we're small, we're just 100,000, 110,000 persons, due to our multi-island state, we have a lot of sea space. And we are also focusing on connectivity in that space as well. So we actually did a GMDSS project on our USF, which is a Global Mobile Distress Safety System. That's a new standard from the IMO and the ITU that came out early 90s, and more or less provide, it's an emergency network, a digital emergency network that replaces the original VHF channel 16. Yeah, digital system. And we put that in 5 years ago. We put it in, and we actually collaborated with the World Bank, put funding into it, and as well as Excel. So we actually 3 parties worked on that one. And that we just renewed the contract for that last month. So the projects we do, we just fund them and put them up. Big issue with projects is maintenance. So all our projects have maintenance components. We maintain them for like 5 years or 3 years. And once they're okay, we continue. So that project, we just actually renew that project. Cable Wireless has a contract there. So that system is up and running. And that provides, I say, we have a lot of sea space, we have a lot of maritime traffic, both about our own persons moving among the islands, as well as people passing through, a lot of tourists as well, yachts. And especially with this changing world, you have both emergencies that is natural and some are natural. So, and have the crime issue as well. So that provides an opportunity for them to get a quick call. So it's like an emergency service, a 911 for the sea, or sea space. What it is. So, and that's very important for economic development. You have any issues develop with a yacht getting robbed or something, and they can't get access to stuff. It's bad for the country. So it's both for official folk, our tourists, our yachties. So we look just not just on the terrestrial communication needs, but also on our seascape needs as well. Okay, so thanks for having me, Michelle. It's a joy being on your program.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the ICT Pulse podcast. You can find links to some of the things we talked about on our website, ict-pulse.com. If you like this episode, please show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes, as it will help others find the show. You can email us at info@ict-pulse.com or drop us a note on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ICTPulse, or via Twitter @ICTPulse. We hope you'll join us again for our next episode. Take care.